In this video, I go over 5 plugins that every music producer should know. What up guys, Mayan here with another music production video. If you're new to my channel, hit the bell, click subscribe to get my latest videos. In this channel, you're going to find tips, tricks, unsalted reviews of tools that will help you in the music creation process. In this video, I'm going to go over my top 5 Waves plugins and how I use them in my productions, and I'm going to show you some examples of how you can use them in your production. Let's do this. So, these are my top 5 Waves music production plugins. I'm going to start with the number 1 that I like. It's called the OneKnob, and they have like an entire suite of like OneKnob plugins that you can use. But I've been trying to like keep my inventory kind of short regarding like the plugins that I use, because if not, you end up having like a bunch of plugins and you end up using only 1 or 2 anyways. So I decided to just stop getting all the suits and just get the ones that I like. So what this one does is it adds brightness to sounds or like whatnot, and the way that I use it is I add it in the hats, right? Sometimes, you know, when you're writing a techno track, hats are a little bit brighter and rougher, and this does exactly that. So I'm going to show you real quick how this plugin works, which is super simple. So let's see how this helps me out without having to EQ it or anything like that. So I think that sounds brighter, more club oriented, so that's what I want, right? And that's how I use them. I'm assuming that you can use them in 20,000 different ways, but I'm just showing you how I do it. The second one that I'm going to talk about is the H delay. I love this one, right? I use it for filler sounds, for vocals, for delays in the vocals, for mangling sound. Mute this one because I have it set up as a buzz so you guys can see what I mean. So as you can tell, this sample, you know, has some delays going on when it was recorded. But if I wanted to use it and extend the delay, or even like make it sound completely different, I would use this, the H delay on it. And this is just let me see, just the basic stereo, and see how it sounds. See that tail? It didn't, like, the sample didn't have it, so I usually add that. If you want something a little bit more dramatic, right? Let me see. Spring stereo. Let's try this one and see. And then the delay, depending on like what you want to do with this, you know, it affects the incoming signal, right? So as you could hear, it's going to take longer for the incoming signal to be affected by the H delay. And then you have the depth, and you also have high pass, low pass filters, so you can affect the sound that's coming through. The dry wet, it's going to affect the sample or whatever you're using this on, how much of that's gonna be affected. And then you have the output, which is the volume of the actual new modified sound, analog. It adds a little bit of dirt to the signal, which is kind of fun. If you just want to add this, you know, without any of the dry wetness to this sample, then it would sound as if it was going through an analog chain, which is great. I use it from time to time in the actual track with the sample or samples that I'm using, but then some other times I actually use it in a bus channel, and the cool thing about using a bus channel is that you get to use the actual sound coming from the sample or loop or like whatever, and then you can get to affect it to just add a little bit of flair in the mix, which is great. So let me show you what I mean with that. So like right now, this is usually what I do. I add an EQ and then I take out like different frequencies, so it doesn't sound the same. It just adds some little tails and ambiances to it. So let's see. And I'm just using the actual basic H delay like started preset, and then I'm gonna show you after I tweak out some of the EQ. So this is what's gonna be coming out of the bus, right? Because that's gonna be kind of like the mid frequencies. But if I just wanted to hit, you know, like the from 2000 and up, then this is how it would sound like. So those like little tails, and especially when you're doing like breaks, you know, it adds a little bit of ambience, so the tracks don't seem to be cut off completely when you take out elements as well. Alright, enough. Alright, let's move on to my third plugin. This one, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, music producer that hopefully we'll have in the channel eventually, showed me how this could help my mixing and my mix downs, and I've used it ever since. Technically I use it in the master because it helps me with my mixing to make sure that I don't have any phase canceling frequencies. And I'm gonna, like right here, I'm gonna show you what phase canceling is, and the way that I understand it, right? And I'm gonna give you this is going to be the scientific term for it, but the way that I understand it is when it bleeds out where it says anti-phase, that's going to affect the mix, and it's gonna make your mix sound muddy, and you're gonna lose frequencies in your track. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this off, and then I'm gonna go over here to this noisy shaker loop. The cool thing about this, right, is that sometimes, you know, you'll buy loops or loop packs, you know, like from places like Splice or like whatnot, and you'll think, oh yeah, like this sounds great, it sounds dope, and it was recorded like, oh man. But then if you actually look at this spectrum right here, and I set it up as fast as in my system, so I'm able to see if the actual loop is clean or not. So let's check this out. I haven't touched anything. I actually have everything turned off here, so let's see how this sounds. Alright, so you know, as you can hear, I mean, the loop sounds good, right? Alright, now let's turn this on and let me show you. You can have a visual reference of what I mean. So see how this bleeds out? Is because they were using some sort of like delay or something like that while they were recording the loop, and even though it sounds good, once you mix your track, that's gonna take away from different frequencies, and you're gonna be thinking, oh, maybe I should push this, or maybe I should like do this with it. But it turns out that all of this happening here with one sample is probably happening with other samples if you're using a lot of loops, and that's going to make your mix sound like crap. So the way that I deal with phasing, right? There's two plugins. Logic has its own, which is called the directional mixer, right? And the cool thing about this is that you're able to like narrow down that spectrum to the stuff that's bleeding out. So let me show you. So as you can see, bleeding is happening. We can like tame it down a lot, and that's going to be really useful when you're mixing things down. especially in areas where you have a lot of like sub frequencies and lower end frequencies. It's going to make those frequencies come up once it's not, all this cancellation is not happening. Then the other plugin that I use to take care of that, it's this I actually got it for free. I don't know if it's still free, but you should look it up. It's by SoundSpot, and it pretty much does the same thing, except that you can use it in Ableton, Logic, Fruity Loops, and all the other like the DAWs out there. So let's test it out. So even though it's losing a little bit of like the reverb that they used, I think that you can take care of that later on in your own mixing, so it sounds good to your own purpose. So as you can see, this is a cool plugin. You can turn on the bypass off, which is great. The only thing that why I use the Logic one more, right, is because you can actually, if I use this one, I'm able to use this direction, and it pans it, so I don't have to do the panning right here on the mixing board, right? So that's the third plugin that I recommend you get from Waves. And then let's see, I have the H Reverb. This one was introduced to me by a colleague, live audio engineer, because he said that it is like the best thing that he's ever used for guitars. And I don't have any guitars, but I use it a lot on my synth sounds coming from, you know, my modular or my analog 4 or any other thing that I'm using from a live perspective or a jam session, right? So let me show you how this works. I'm gonna go and look for a sound, right? Okay, that sounds interesting. Let's drop it here. So as you can tell here, this one is, so since the project is at 120 and this one's at 125, so what I do to get it all to have the same tempo, I go over here in Logic and then see, edit, time stretch to the nearest bar, and that stretches it out, and now it's going to sound at 120. I think that you might be able to hear my son waking up. Okay, so this is how I would use it, right? So I will start bringing it in as the track progresses, right? And when it's about to come to the break, I'll start ramping it up. And I would also add a delay to it, and then it was kind of like a fade out with this plugin. Okay, so my last plugin number 5, is the NLS channel. And the cool thing about this one is that it actually emulates different consoles that are used in the big studios. And I like this one right here because it emulates the Neve. So if you actually add this to every channel once you're mixing down your tracks, it's going to emulate as if you were working through a Neve console, which it's kind of cool because then you could have an entire template of Neve channels happening in your own DAW without having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars for a Neve console. So yeah, even by just having this on in one of your channels, it changes the way that the channel sounds, right? So I'm gonna move this one down so you guys can hear the difference. So it adds a little bit of warmth to it. And this is something that I picked up from different audio engineers that use it to emulate as if they had a Neve console where they're working through it. So yeah, it adds that Neve preamp sweetness to it. So yeah, guys, those are my top 5 Waves music production plugins that I use in all my productions. So let me know, guys, what Wave plugins are you using and how you're using them. All right, have a good night.